well. So
Okay, there might be a little bit of delay and lag, but that's
yeah,
that's only natural when you're here with awesome content. We got Juicy45 joining us, and he's going to be talking about the Battlegrounds 2023 map pack. So welcome you guys to ScriptChat. It is the 12th of March, 2023, and we're just a couple minutes here after noon. For those of you who do not know, which I can't imagine there would be that many of you, but in case there are some of you who are wondering, Juicy45 is a longtime friend of the community. He is a streamer, a dad, a gamer. What else should I describe you as, Juicy? Tournament organizer. Tournament organizer. Um, so he does a lot of stuff, and we're very grateful to have him on the show today. We're going to be showing off the Battlegrounds 2023 map pack, as I said before. And basically, this is kind of like, and Juicy can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of like a list of ideas that the community collectively has, and they give their map scripter some feedback on it and say, hey, can you try this, or can you make a map around this? And then he does it, and then they test it, and they modify it. So it's a well-tested, highly iterated process. Is that right, Juicy?
yeah. I mean, the road we've traveled to get where we are today with some of these maps. I mean, I'm not one to really get down in the fine detail of the map scripting, but there there's so much involved with it, and Hitch has been insane with it. I mean, he made all of them, and then, like you said, the community. We have, like, you're going to be participating in a show match soon, so like you're going to provide us with feedback, right? So essentially, we take all the feedback, and then we try to implement everything as best we can, obviously without compromising like what the vision is for the map, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's insane. We've been doing tournaments on these Battlegrounds maps for 2 years. This will be the third year upcoming, but everything's been modified within the last 2 months. Basically, we've made a lot of changes, trying to keep the maps competitive. So excited to see what everyone's got strategy wise. Especially, that's my favorite part about custom maps. There's no meta.
Yeah, or at least that it takes a long time to figure out what the meta was. If it took us 10 years to figure out the meta for Arabia, and even then it changes as new civilizations are introduced or balance changes are made. So that's the really fun part about custom maps, is that there's a very good chance that, okay, Emu Warrior, there's a very good chance that somebody is not going to have figured it out yet. Emu Warrior says it's very hard to hear Juicy. Could you turn him up a bit? Yes, let me see what I can do to turn Juicy up a bit. At least I think I can turn him up a bit. Let's see.
Yeah, you should be able to
No,
adjust it in Discord, I imagine.
I've got you at 100% in Discord. Let's see. Let's turn up this other dial here. All right, try saying something again.
Hello, hello. Test, test.
Is
Can you hear
that
me now?
yeah? Is that better, Emu Warrior? Let me know if that isn't better, and we'll go in and we'll make some more adjustments. Okay, so without further ado, we got 13 maps, and I'm going to ask you some questions about them. It's still the same, says the Emu Warrior.
I mean,
All
I
right.
can I can try to just talk a little louder if that helps. I mean, I can't really eat my mic any more than I am, so.
All right. We'll try turning you up on this dial as well. So I'm the format that I'm gonna do this in is I'm gonna ask you what are you going for with the map? What are some civilizations that are popular for the map? And have you ever seen anybody play the map in a way that was not designed or intended, and it was effective? Have you ever seen
Yeah.
anybody break the meta on a map or catch you by surprise in an effective way? And I think it could be a lot of fun. There are a lot of fun maps here, custom maps. And if you want me to show them, I'm assuming that your next thing that you're looking to do is 1v1, or is it team game, or what is it? It's
We're
1v1,
going
right?
1v1s for this
Okay.
one because we did team games last, so
We'll, we will show them in 1v1 generations then.
sounds good.
So the
You
first
want to
one,
start alphabetically?
Yep. Well, I don't know. I'm starting with whatever list I've got here. It looks like it is alphabetical now that you mention it. I got Arena Cove. Tell me about this map, Juicy.
Oh man, this map's been amazing. So the original intent behind this was to have a water-heavy map, something that could be won or lost on water, but yet still have the possibility to come back on the land, right? And we've seen insanely long matches on here. I mean, I remember one game went 3.5 hour in-game time. There's so much res on this map, it's ridiculous. Water, though, does win the map and the map control. It can't control all of the land, right? So it's been a true joy to watch. There's also been some really interesting landings. I know the first time I tested this map, Weasel actually landed me with a Veil, like down in the southern part of the map because you can land by the woodline.
Hmm.
And he dropped a beloved stable with the Malay, and Elephant rushed me on this map.
What? That's crazy. So he must have snuck up and got some building space without you noticing, or maybe he quick walled the village you're in or something.
Yeah,
So
it
even
was
if you
without
did
my
notice.
notice. He was barely fighting back on water, and I didn't understand why. So it was
Ah.
insane. But we actually changed this map up too. We added these islands in the middle. They're not like super pronounced or anything, but we wanted there to be a better possibility for galley play because it was such a fire map or fire ship map for a long time, and this allows some obstacles for some micro around. So
So the big thing that we need to know about this map is that there's a lot of fish. It's always worth fishing and always worth docking. Um, Fire ships are a popular strategy. It's based on how close the players are together, perhaps, or just it's a generally strong feudal age dock unit. But the addition of these islands could make galleys more viable. These islands do not appear buildable, though. Are they buildable? Let's see.
I do not believe that they are. I have not
Oh,
tested it. This, like I said, all these changes are new, and when testing this, it's an interesting thing that I didn't even think about, and someone mentioned it recently, and I have not tested it. Looks like you've been able to put a few barracks there, though. So
yep. I don't
I'm
know
curious if you
exactly
can
who
put a
would,
dock
but
on it.
I should be able to. I can see the beach terrain surrounding it. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I mean, I think I like that though. I think that
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, his docking in the center, if you win map control, that's just more of a bonus, right?
Hmm.
And there's not really any other bonus other than the relics being potential. So
Yeah. Now, is there always going to be one relic on the water here, and the other relics, the other four relics, are sort of out here
there
outside the
should
walls?
be
Okay.
there should be a minimum of one. It's not set to a maximum, but the way that he's got it set up with the script, it spreads the rest out decently. We have had some issues spreading them out evenly, and Hitch has been working on that here and there, but all
So,
part of the process.
so do people? Does anybody make scouts? Could scouts work on this map, Juicy, or is it just not plausible? Do people like build
So
gazillions of farms out here and just raid the crap out of their enemy in the late game and just not care about the water? I guess what I'm really asking is, can you win this map without winning water?
yeah, 100%. I've seen it. It's been done. Interestingly, this map provides a lot of entertaining builds. I forget who it was. I'd have to go back and check, but someone did a Khmer fast castle forward monk siege, and castle dropped, and actually was able to deny res everywhere. So basically, the only thing the player had that won water was fish, and they were just unable to survive. It was extremely entertaining.
Wow. That sounds like a crazy yo-yo build. Always grateful for the maps that offer a clown strategy. Now, interestingly, I looked at this map and the additional player sizes, and there's
Oh
actually
yeah, you have that.
palisade walls instead of the stone walls. Why are the walls different on different size map?
Well, for the 1v1, we wanted it to be purposefully a water map, but for 2v2s and up, we wanted it to be a lot different. So essentially, we have the same map, but if you were to load up a 2v2, you would see there'd be fortified palisades, I believe is what he has it set to right now. and that just allows for some different strategies. We've seen people go archers and break into people's bases in the feudal age, completely ignore the pawns, which are separate in the other generations.
Mm-hmm.
And it just allows for a more interesting strategic situation, and I love how people have to, again, rediscover the meta.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is a completely different map in 2v2. I mean, it's basically the only thing it has in common is a big block of wood in the back of your base and a pond that you have to fight over with your opponent. Now, you're going to be against your opponent on the pond, right? You and your teammate are never going to be on the same pond.
Interestingly, I thought it would be a 1v1 on water, but we've had players dock one pond and basically be like, okay, we're winning one pond, we're giving the other one up, which is another strategic choice.
Hmm. That is interesting. So what kind of civs do we see? Going back to the 1v1, make sure that we don't get too sidetracked here. What kind of civilizations do people are popular on this map?
Basically, the water civs, like Byzantines, Italians, Vikings. Some interesting ones we've seen, like I said, Khmer. We've seen Lithuanians quite a bit because on hybrid maps they're quite good. Berbers. I mean, we've seen a very good number of civs on this map. I think the only ones we don't really see are like the meso civs, but I mean, there's a argument to be made that that could still be viable.
All right, and any break the meta strategies that you want to tell us about before we move on to the next map? You told us about that Khmer fast castle drop strategy, which is pretty wild. Any other wild stories you want to tell us about this map?
I mean, that's the beautiful thing, right? The meta can change by player's perspective, and other than the weird fast castle forward siege monk play, we haven't really seen a ton of crazy things. Although we have seen a few like Sicilian attempts at donjon rushes. We've seen a few different attempts with tower rushes as well, but for the most part, I'm just waiting for someone to try to douche on this map.
Well, if you give them a starting transport ship, it might be possible.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but then we got to talk about adding a house in as well, just for
Mm-hmm.
pop space. I don't know if we really want to go that direction with this one.
All right, so guys, this is Arena Cove. This is part of Juicy45, the Juicy Community's map scripting mod that they have. If you guys are interested in any of the maps, you can look up Battlegrounds 2023. Speaking of Battlegrounds, that's the next map, Juicy. Tell us about
Yeah.
Battlegrounds. What do we need to know about this map?
Oh man, this map is extremely aggressive. It's it's we've seen a lot of walling, however, which has been very interesting. I wanted a very feudal heavy map. Battlegrounds has been the Arabia per se of our tournaments, and it's always been game one. We are going to be changing that with a new draft system this year, but it's still going to be here. It's still going to be around. We've seen everything you can think of work on this map, which is again surprising to me. I assumed when we made this map it'd be scout heavy, and we would see scout wars and feudal, transferring into knights and so on and so forth. But surprisingly, we've seen a lot of archer play here.
Hmm.
Cav archers as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You would think that the map being so open, and it seems like the players are pretty far apart, that scouts would be popular. But I guess maybe they're not too much further apart than traditional Arabia anyway. And what makes the map so aggressive?
Just how open it is. You have very limited resources around your starting town center. Just barely enough, as in food, to click up to the next age. We originally had this map with extra boar in the center, and we had to remove that. It just became too much of a powerful thing for Berbers to be able to lure 3 or 4 boars at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the elevation on this map is always interesting. So we do see a lot of like Tatars picks here. My favorite though on this map is when someone picks Teutons. Super cheap farms really help with the economy. But again, we've seen walling, very heavy walling on this map, which is something I didn't expect to see a lot of. And even in the 2v2s, I mean, players were full walling themselves in. It was pretty interesting.
Is it possible to boom on this map, Juicy? Or is booming asking for trouble here? Because I look at this wood line, and the back wood line, although thick, is at an angle. It's sloped. So you can't really build town centers on this wood line back here. You could build them in, you could build them forward, but then you've got forward town centers that your enemy can punish. So tell me a little bit of like what's the average number of town centers we see people going for here? Is this a one town center map? If you make it to Castle Age, you just try to kill your opponent in Castle Age, or do people like boom up everywhere?
I really thought we'd see a lot more aggression on this map than we have, and the downhill wood lines, that was done purposefully because we wanted people to not feel safe putting like everything there and force them to go to the mid to make it more aggressive. But that said, we see a lot of 2 TC play here actually. And then usually people try to drop their third TC in the center on gold because gold is so limited at the home base. Kind of like how you'd see like a gold rush or gold pit game.
Okay. So folks will maybe build a second town center on some outlying piece of forest out here. And then they'll go 2 TC for a while, and then if they feel safe enough, and as they run out of gold, they'll drop one on the gold in the middle. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, lots of different strategies. Again, this is another map that I originally intended to be a very feudal heavy map, but we've seen quite a few of these games go to Imp.
So, favorite civs for this map?
I mean, for me, I like Teutons on the map because there's such limited resources, cheaper farms. I really like it. But we've seen more like diverse strategies. So we've seen everything from meso civs to we've even seen Turks on this map. I mean, I prefer a civ with a good eco bonus and good cav myself, but I've been proven wrong. Everyone likes to go into their own chosen strategy, and that's what I think is the beauty of this map is so many different strategies do come into play. Not as obvious civ selection, especially when you have a draft in place.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what makes a map a good map, right? Is that there's not only one civilization that's viable on it. You could have different alternatives. You could even appeal to a larger group of people that have different play styles. Anything
I've
else?
received a lot of like criticism about how open some of the maps are, but I'm like, well, look at the map pool. There's a lot of closed maps or maps that could be closed up fairly easily as well, which we'll get into later.
What a bunch of wimps, Juicy. That people in their
I wouldn't
closed
say
map.
that.
That's all right. I prefer closed maps myself. But that's all right. Open maps are definitely the biggest part of the game. Arabia is the most popular map. It always has been. What else do we need to know about this map, Juicy, before we move on? In terms of civ picks or what's the most craziest non-meta strategy that you've seen on this map? What did somebody do that just caught you by surprise? It was like, what? That shouldn't be possible here. And they just made it work.
I mean, way back in the first tournament, Exorcist, it's just, I'm sure a lot of people that recognize his name. He was the one that basically prompted the changes to this map because of the boar, but he was able to like fast imp, and it was it was
What?
ridiculous.
He was
Yeah,
Berbers and he went fast imp. He lured 4 boars to his town center and went fast imp.
yeah, and in the generation, he was kind of like in the north corner, and he was just able to like keep himself super safe and basically just ran over his opponent then because he had such great tech.
That's pretty funny. All right. Well, sometimes you got to respect that when the players can find a way to use the map, and you're like, nah, we got to change that. That's just too ridiculous.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it was extremely interesting to see, but I was like, all right, now we have to change it. So,
yep. Yeah. I had a similar thing happen on one of the maps for the King of Ireland tournament. All right. So anything we need to know? Anything else we need to know about this map, Juicy, before we talk about the next map in the pack?
no, I just think if you're gonna play the tournament or the show match, you just gotta really be aware of the elevations on this map make it really interesting. It's hard to push bases if they're sitting on top of the hill, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of people struggle with that.
All right, the next one is Bog Delta.
Yeah. Bog Delta's one of my babies right here. I
Now,
love this map.
tell me about Bog Delta. What are you supposed to do for this map?
So, initially, I assumed this would be a very wall up and be heavy on water kind of map, but yet again, everyone proves my idea in theory wrong. People barely fight for water on this map, which is really interesting. That usually comes into play later. We don't really see much in the way of docks. It's a very fast castle map. You can wall up fairly easily. It's not all that difficult to wall. And then it becomes a kind of like a Britain Ethiopian, sit back and boom and grow my ARB treb numbers sort of map.
Interesting. So they don't really is it because there are enough resources on the main lands that they're not fighting over the water more? Maybe people feel like they can kind of put it off going over to these islands and getting the resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it. There's extra hunt here as well. The water buffalo being like a staple on this map, it doesn't really change. That adds additional food. The water is not super great for fishing unless you're out on an island and you're like able to drop a dock out there and be closer to more short, like deep fish,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, right? So I think it kind of pushes players to do it more of a land wall fast castle play, which I actually have come to enjoy. But the problem with that, though, is if you allow your opponent to have water control, we have the beautiful centerpiece here that divides the island and the bog terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And so many things can be done here: demos, galleys. I think we've even seen long long ships and all that stuff on this. So it's been really interesting to see. Again, so many different things that we've seen on this map as far as strategies, but mainly it's archer boom into treb situation.
So not too many cavalry civilizations chosen, which I guess makes sense because there's not really any for them to go. There's you don't really need that mobility so much. So do players dock? Do players build a dock and make a couple fishing ships? Do they just completely ignore the water?
I would say 75% of the time they ignore water.
Wow. And the
It's
and the
been very eye-opening, honestly. It was really surprising. We even talked about changing the map to have more land to make that more of like the focus on it, but ultimately, it really rewards a player if they do win water and are able to hold land, right? And it's a risk reward situation.
I see. Interesting. So the civilizations of choice seem to be mainly archer civilizations. Folks can kind of camp in these choke points and deal out lots of range damage with their archers. The wood lines are pretty thick, and it's probably pretty relatively straightforward to wall. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it was a little surprising, but like I said, the fish it's not super rewarding to take that. There's not a ton of deep fish on the map. Like there's a good number, obviously, but it's very far from where you would be docking.
So if you could change anything about this map, or you could have anything you wanted about this map to get it to exactly where you want it to be, what would it be? Or is it perfect exactly the way that it is and it just kind of surprised you the way that people played it?
I think I'm really happy with the map overall. The one thing that I know we need to work on is some of the elevations. Like if you could load up a couple different gens, you might see one island for the player is very flat, while the other side has some elevation issues that a player would have to deal with. It doesn't happen
Oh,
all the time, but it can be a little bit awkward with that.
oh, that the elevation is not fairly distributed. And that's
Hmm.
kind of an issue with DE in general at large. It's like I can see that this player has hills on his island, and this other player does not seem to have hills on his island, which is weird because the hills are usually biased toward this bottom edge of the map down here, near where red is.
Hmm.
But yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
kind of borderline just to remove all elevation at this point, but again, I like having that be like, all right, there's a hill, like we need to castle that hill kind of situation. It's much easier to defend, you know. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it
We've been in talks about it for a while. We haven't really changed that though.
it makes it. I agree. I think elevation adds a level of complexity to a map that's definitely worth having if you can keep it balanced. And really, it's not too bad to keep it balanced.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we've like seen like as things have developed, it usually doesn't really come into play. Most of the hills are very small and or there's a wood line on a hill or something. It's not been like in the very center near the bog terrain. So we'll see. But that's possibly something we'll change in the future.
All right, let's see here. Dry Lake Battlegrounds. So let's take a look at this
Ooh.
dry lake here.
Dry Lake was actually a creation from Kados 101. I don't know if you are familiar with his name, but he's an
Mm-hmm.
Australian.
Yep.
And whenever Hitch and I first started doing tournaments, we didn't really have experience with map scripting or anything like that. So we ultimately had like one or two maps, and Kados made them originally before Hitch really got into it. And this is the predecessor from the original. The original was much different. We have changed this almost completely as far as how things are generated. The cracked terrain was really like the main feature behind this part that Kados wanted, being its negative 25% extra damage if you have a building on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we changed the wood lines. They used to be more of a like I don't know what the proper terrain is, but like a grasslands tree gen. And whereas this, we wanted to be more of like that African map feeling where it's more open, more spread out, lots of holes. This has been a great map for 1v1s, though. Extremely aggressive. Laming. I always allow laming in my tournaments. I think if it can. I think if it can be done in a ranked match and it's not breaking like the rules of like, cheating, straggler tree laming, that kind of thing, I think it's pretty decent. Like I don't have an issue with that, right? So lots of food on the map, lots of boars, 3 boars per player. They are spread pretty evenly, pretty far away though. So it makes for some interesting strategies. Japanese have been chosen here a lot, as well as Bulgarians. Any civ that has like a good man at arms play. But we've also seen players go into scouts, go straight archers. Walling on this map is possible, but it takes a lot to invest into.
And it looks like you cannot wall to the edge of the map either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like
because
a
this
beachy
is
terrain.
quicksand terrain that you cannot build walls on top of, so that could be kind of annoying to do. That and there are not, as far as I can tell, there aren't any wolves in this lower portion of the map, and this actually looks like kind of a common concept. There was a submission to Nilly's Apartment Cup that had this sort of pitted area in the middle. That case, it had a bunch of fish that you would create. But it seems like it's sort of a common concept to have players in this lowland area, and then have highlands surrounding it, and then have unwallable or unbuildable terrain between the two. It's fun. No wolves, so that would mean that in theory, blue could walk over and take red's boar with a villager. He doesn't have to worry about a wolf getting in the way. But
Yeah,
you don't start with the standard scout. You start with this horse scout, probably for that reason, so that you cannot use your scout to lame somebody. You have to send a villager forward to lame. But the scout can still help because it can block the boar while it's trying to attack the villager.
yeah, exactly. We have a couple maps like that. I'm not a big fan of the horse scout myself, but it became very necessary for this map.
Because people were using their scouts to lame probably other people's
Yeah,
boars.
yeah. And it became a situation where then someone would have 4 boars more often than not to the 2 of someone else. So we kind of tried to balance that out a little bit. But I mean, the original map here was very similar. The only difference was we only had one little tiny patch of water with like 4 fishing chips in the very center. But we wanted to change that. No one ever went for it. I think we had one guy pick the Indians civ back in the day and actually went for it, and it paid off for them. But I mean, this is a really fun map to see what people go for, but usually it's man-at-arms archers pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a couple douche attempts on this map, but I don't think those worked out too well because I think they kept putting it on the cracked
The
terrain.
cracked terrain. Oh man, that's the worst. You know what you could do though is I think that you could actually build your town center on the cracked terrain and then delete it immediately, so you get most of the resources back, and then the terrain is changed from the cracked terrain to dirt 2, and then when you build there, it won't take the bonus damage. But that's a lot of micro, and plus your opponent's going to see exactly where your town center would be going. So
Yeah,
douching could be
that would be
pretty
really
hard.
interesting.
Man at Arms into Archers, though, makes a lot of sense given how close the players are together. Again, you may not need the mobility of Scouts. And although, I guess if somebody could try to like come out here to the outer section and build like a nice little walled-in community with a lumber camp and maybe a mill, or if it's on the gold, maybe a tower and a mining camp too. And scouts could be better at getting at that, maybe. But then again, maybe the scouts go up there and they attack everything and they just don't get in. So who knows?
Yeah,
But
well, that's one of the reasons we changed the wood lines up too. There's more holes that are possible pathways for units to go through with these trees
mhm.
compared to like just like like I said, like the grassland trees. So it's a very interesting map. To be honest, we don't see a lot of action on the outside. A lot of games end too frequently uh, before like the 20-minute mark, even. So
Mhm. Now, why didn't you? So that's why you didn't do the Baobab Forest, because you didn't want the
yeah,
game to be over in 5 minutes. But the Baobab Forest has massive holes in it.
yes. Yeah, we tried that, and it was an instant no from both Hitch and myself.
All right. Anything else that we need to know about this map? It looks like a lot of fun.
Nothing specific. I mean, it's just a very heavy aggression map. It's been a lot of fun to watch players change their strategies here, and this will be the first time in these show matches that we have going on that these maps have actually been played with all their new changes. So again, it mixes it up, changes the meta. It's going to be interesting.
All right. So with that, we'll move on to the next one. Flooded
Oh.
Hills. This has got me really excited looking at this map. Tell us about this map, Juicy.
This map is a work in progress. We're relatively happy with it right now, although changes will probably have to be made. Um, it's a mess right now, right? You look at it, you don't have a wood line next to a town center, which
Nope.
makes it very awkward, but also makes it very interesting for a caster to be like, where's he gonna get wood? Like, oh no, this like, there's a lot of ifs in this situation, right? I predict this will be a galley heavy map because everything could be ranged by galleys,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I don't know if that's going to really pay off because fire ships, you're less paying attention to fire ships and say the player going galleys, then his wood line gets hit by man at arms or scouts or archers. Like, it's going to be chaotic. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to change some of the terrain we have for this map, though. We kind of wanted to do like the Northern Isles, like rocky terrain around some of the islands, but I don't think we've really made any progress on that yet. Not all of them, just like some of the ones in the middle. So it's harder to like put docks on.
Yeah, this looks really fun. Have you guys experimented with increasing the size of the islands so that it's harder to range everything with galleys, or does that just make it harder to get the look and feel of the map that you want? Which is this
We
network of.
actually already increased the size of the islands. They were smaller to begin with, so
Oh, okay.
We've had some really interesting generations with this one. I haven't even tested 1v1s on this since we made the previous changes. We also, when we changed the size of the islands last, we changed the fact that you start with one house and a transport ship.
Mm-hmm.
Because we wanted it to be good for you to be able to scout and find your opponent on this map. Because if you load up a few gens, it can be kind of interesting where players end up spawning. It's not always in like places you might expect. Sometimes it's relatively straight across. Sometimes it's, a little bit different. So lots of interesting ideas for this one. One thing we might have to visit is like the terrain, the island sizes, I suppose, as well. But we did make it so you have a gold directly, like a tile away from your town center or adjacent to your town center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that should help a lot. Players can at least take gold safely. Although this gold does look a little bit close to the channel. And we did talk about, I think because I've looked at this before, I don't know that we talked about it on stream, but what would really help out against the galleys would be actually elevating the hills over the water, so that the galley damage is nerfed and the amount of damage that units deal to ships is increased. But that can be difficult to achieve.
Yeah, well, and we had discussed elevation on this map, but we just kind of ran with what Hitch had already put here, just to get some testing in on the map. Like I said, we haven't had many eyes on this at all. Many people try to avoid this map basically so far.
So not much testing has been done, and I think it's one of your newer maps as well. So you haven't really seen any 1v1s on it yet that you want to talk about, or any Civ picks that you want to talk about?
We haven't, other than me testing it against the AI or against Hitch or something like that. Like we really haven't seen competitive 1v1s played on this frequently enough to have a decision formed on strategy yet.
So this is one of the ones that you're really looking for some feedback on, then, to see some testing and have people say this is what worked really well and this is what could be improved.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, as you know, and we've made the changes we can make by what we visualize for the map. But until people actually play it and can provide feedback and we can cast those games and see what happens, it's kind of up in the air right now.
All right, anything else that we should know about flooded hills? It looks like fun to me, and I did check. It does spawn an 8-player size as well. Although it does, I think, take a little bit longer because there are more of these little lands that need to be interconnected. So
Yeah, I think this could be a really fun team game map too. So we'll see what happens. But I don't really have anything else on this one because it's so new.
new and exciting though. So the next one is Forests with four in the forest spelled Four. What do we got to know about this map, Juicy?
Oh, there's forests.
Yeah, there are 4 of them
uh,
too. Look at that.
Yeah, this was originally a map design that Hitch made that he thought was more of a memey kind of joke. Like he didn't actually intend it to be played upon.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some potential in this. I was like, this could be actually a really sick map if we can get some things changed, which we did change. We changed some elevation things. We changed the fact that all the boars are in the center, except for one that you get around your starting town center. I believe we limited the number of herdables. I think you're missing 2 herdables
Mm.
as compared to normal. So it kind of prompts you to have to go towards the mid. This was a lot of fun for our 2v2 tournament. This will be the first time we see it on the 1v1s at all, as far as a competitive show match. So, again, this one's kind of up in the air, but I see potential in maps like this that I'm like, we kind of have to run with it and see what we can come up with. Because it is fairly securable to wall. Not that you're going to want to sit behind those walls for too long, is you don't have a ton of res. But all things considered, I mean, I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with it. And, the fact that its name represents the four forests is entertaining.
So it looks like doing some generations for this. It looks like the players spawn in basically the halfway point between any of these four columns, if you will.
Yep.
It looks like it's kind of a direct placement. It's not a random placement. So you have to worry about your spawning right here or something. You're always going to have an equal window into the boars as everybody else. Um, so this is an aggressive map, or is this a I wall it up and I go fast castle kind of map? And then I maybe build a town center on 2 or 3 boars in the middle.
Well, it's actually been very scouts and archers with the 2v2s. As far as the 1v1s are concerned, I think I think that it's never a good idea to let your opponent have the time to wall all this up. So I'm for sure voting for people to be more aggressive on this map. However, I could see a case to wall up, and you have enough resources around your town center that you could FC into knights and be just fine, but then you relinquish map control, which on this map with all these boars could be an issue.
Yeah, giving your opponent all of these boars. What are some popular civ choices on this map and why?
I mean, Berbers, because of the speed, they can actually lure a boar or two, usually from the mid, because they spawn relatively spread out, but there's usually one or two relatively close to your town center, which makes it an interesting choice. Also, Mongols, a lot of Mongols choices here we saw in the 2v2s, but we've seen everything from Goths to Mongols in this map, so I think it'll be a heavy scouts battle for 1v1s, but time will tell. We've even seen some towers on the wood lines, being as wood is so limited.
These massive wood lines here. How does anybody tower? I guess you'd come in and tower from the side.
Well, and usually people quick wall in their wood line, so it makes you have to move wood lines essentially. Build another one on the other side.
Hey, the Cookie Pirate is here. What up? Cookie Pirate sees Juicy45 in the title of the video and he clicks. It's very simple. And who can blame him?
What's up?
Yeah, we're just going over the Battlegrounds 2023 map pack, and Juicy is the leader of the Juicy community, and so we're talking about some of their ideas that they put together, and Hitch packaged it up into a nice map pack, and so that's what we're talking about here. Um, yeah, it looks like a decent amount of stone, so towers could work. If you're close to your opponent, like this is the thing that I like about this map is that the variety of scouting and knowing that hey, I'm close to my opponent, I'm on an adjacent edge to my opponent instead of being like opposite edges, could make Man-at-Arms viable in this case, where Man-at-Arms might not be viable in a situation like this where the players are all the way on the opposite sides of the map, right? So a map having that variety is a good thing.
Yeah, and then as you may have noticed, we put the horse back in instead of the scout, so it makes it even harder to pull boar from the middle with the scout.
That's true. Unless this horse bites the boar, they are not going to fight back.
No, that would be an interesting mechanic, but I'm yet to see that one.
Yeah, I think you actually could do something like you could give people a traditional scout and then upgrade it into a horse, but actually then that would affect all the horses, kind of like the monkey in the Banana Open Classic, where if,
Oh yeah,
so we had to do
that
like
was the kick right there. Oh
we
man.
we had to do the Gaia scout was upgraded into the monkey. Wasn't
Yeah.
there an issue with Portuguese on that map getting access to everybody's scout on the team though? I don't know
Yeah,
if they
there were some
fixed that.
issues. There were some definite issues with that one.
But it did work for a 1v1 application, as far as I know.
No, it did. It did. It was a little bit messy, but it did work.
So anything else we need to know about four rests, Juicy, before we look at the next map in the pack?
Well, another thing, if you click through a few more gens, you're gonna see that it's not always boar. It does shift into elephants in the
Oh,
mid, and that's something that, depending on the map gen you're going to have to pay attention to because obviously the elephants have more food.
They have more food, but they're also more dangerous to lure. So if you pick Berbers and you get elephants in the middle, maybe that's a harder sell. I don't know. Maybe Berbers lure the elephants just fine.
Yeah, I mean
But it'd be more
it's
dangerous.
obviously better,
Here we
but
go.
it's not always. It's only in like the desert terrain. So we'll see if that comes into effect at all. So far, we haven't really seen enough on it, especially 1v1s. We've only had a couple test samples, so it'll be interesting.
So the spacing between the player town center is only a few tiles from the edge of the map. Was that done in per the design? They said we want it to be this far apart, or was this done because these big fat forests were messing with the spawn of player resources?
That's exactly right. We had some issues with some really bugged gens because of where the town center was positioned. So we put it close to the edge of the map, which not ideal in some situations, but also you're going to be pretty well off to wall up a side and the middle at least, especially once you find your opponent. So like the gen you're on right now, obviously if you wall up the center, because you got your opponents directly across from you, they have to go all the way around. Like it takes a lot of time to travel that far, right? So
Mm-hmm. So Cookie Pirate says you are both very low. It might be his sound settings. We got that from the Emu Warrior earlier, and we did turn folks up. I'll have to go through and rewatch the video. I, gosh, I have a hard time. Hopefully that's a little bit better. I don't really know what more I can do here. Um, okay, so yeah, well maybe if you guys want in the future, I could help you move these town centers closer together because we do have an actor area technique that allows the resources to spawn that don't care
okay,
about big forests like this. Not obviously not for right now, but just in general, just something to keep in mind. In mind.
fair enough.
Wait, how do you know, Cookie Pirate? You weren't here at the beginning of the video. I don't know. I don't really know what I can do to turn it up. I got my speakers volume mixer here. I got Discord at 73%. Got Juicy at 100%.
You can right click on my name in Discord and boost my volume that way. That's the
You're
only other option.
I already have. You're at the maximum.
Alright. Yeah.
OBS volume gain. The problem with that is I'm already pretty high. It's already like 70%. And if I turn it too much higher, then my mic will start to pick up the audio. Like we'll be able to hear it through my headphones. My mic will be able to hear it. All right.
I mean, I could try to change mics if you want.
So the next map is lanes. Um, so let's go here.
Yeah, lanes has been a very, very popular choice. Very easy to wall up, but we've seen a lot of problems with that as well. I mean, Man at Arms Towers helps out a lot whenever you change that up a little bit. And there's so many options in this map, but generally this is a fast castle situation here. And I think the lanes part of it kind of speaks for itself, right? You have to chop through to get to other lanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's really fun about this is you don't exactly know what your opponent is doing, like where your opponent is going to chop through. That's the fun part. So if your opponent walls up this front, um, then you don't know which side they're chopping through to. So you do want to chop a side, right? Or do you see people like is this a just push up the middle and kill them like a fast Imperial Age? Make lots of monks and trebuchets and just push up the middle and kill somebody. I think that sounds like a tech chariot or a yo-yo strategy. But maybe the
Hey,
meta is just to kind of open one of these sides up and spill out into here and boom. Tell me about the different strategies you see, Juicy. Mostly FC,
well,
but
well, to touch on what you just said, we've seen problems with players who choose not to chop out. Obviously, they're very restricted in the space that they have, and then gold is limited. Usually you have one gold forward and the other two towards the back. So if you don't chop out, you're usually very limited on gold, and all the relics on this map spawn in the outermost lanes, which makes it very interesting. You can stay in the center area and not chop out, but then you're on a timer, and nobody wants to be put on that timer by themselves, right? So
Mm-hmm.
makes for a lot of interesting strategies. I mean, like I said, Man at Arms Towers was proving to be very successful at first, but it's all about the scouting, and if you can see what their opponent's going for. I mean, we've even seen Khmer fast castles into ballista elephants on this map. There's, again, a lot of strategies, but this one tends to favor players who like closed map situations.
Oh yes, this is a great map. This is a tech chariot map for sure. Um, yeah, this looks like a lot. This looks like a lot of fun though. I've played this map. I like this map a lot. Just because of the variety that it brings. Is the spacing between these lanes random, or is it the same every time?
It's not. It's not the same. It's supposed to be between like 4 and 6 predominantly, but then whenever we have like the other random small force jump in, it can make it wider. So really have to be able to see where you're chopping through if you're planning on using that to actually chop through, so you have a shorter distance, but haven't really hurt anybody or helped anybody in either way. So
I could definitely see this map being played at the S tier pro level. What's Has Hitch ever had this played at a high level, or has it just been you guys? It seems like it's a really creative, map idea, and I'm not really sure why we haven't seen something like this at the high level before.
I mean, we've had some high-level players play the map via the Banana Open. Um, Kingston and freaking Andy, I think, are probably the biggest names that have played this map.
Mm-hmm.
But Hitch isn't really trying to get his maps into the big scene, right? Predominantly, he only started doing this because of me and my desire to have people not play Arabia and Gold Rush and Arena all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he started making the maps because I wanted to host custom map tournaments. And it's worked out really well, and we've kind of run with it for the last couple of years. And I mean, the feedback we get is always positive. It's always been a nice tournament for players to jump in on, and maybe one of those days, if I could ever host a giant professional level tournament, I'd throw some of these maps in there. But you know, maybe worries for the future.
Have you guys ever considered a version of this map where either the inside or the outside of these lanes is an unbuildable rock terrain, so you cannot wall to the edge of it? Have you guys ever
No.
discussed or debated that? I'm not saying that is a good or a bad thing. I'm just kind of curious because everybody loves their, nowadays with maps like Haboob and other creations, right? There's this ring of unbuildable rock terrain, so you can't wall to the edge of some convenient forest. I just
Yeah,
wanted to get your thoughts on it.
we've not, and I don't think we ever would, because I have a dream in my mind that someone will chop through and they will just run to the other side and tower the opponent's wood line so they can't chop through.
Oh,
Um, and that, as well as, this is a very potentially closed map situation, right? So if you were to drop a TC against that wood line, if you couldn't do that, it would be frustrating, I feel like, to have to put it a tile or two away, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, if
So,
the intention is to have a closed map, then that definitely gets in the way. But
well, it's not designed to be a closed map, but the fact that people can wall it in and make it more of a closed map allows for some interesting decisions for people, especially like someone such as yourself. You would probably most likely want to wall this map and stay safe economically, whereas other people might want to just go all in archers, all in, man at arms towers, scouts. I like maps that have a lot of strategic decision making to be done before you even play the map.
What are some popular civs for this map? What do you see people pick often because they think that it works well?
I mean, Lithuanians have been extremely popular on this map, which has been surprising because the relics are all on the outside.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that
the
doesn't make sense to me either.
well, it makes sense in the fact that you have additional food, your eco's so easily rolling, and you can actually chop through then a little faster if you do like a hybrid style map build. But I mean, my favorite strategy I've seen on this is when players go for unique units, and I think it's really viable on this map, and it makes for an interesting situation where you see, like I said, Khmer with their ballista elephants, or you see Burmese with the Rambai. There are some hills, obviously, some elevation here and there, so castles can become a really prevalent part, a very important spot on the map for you to protect.
Hmm. The Cookie Pirate says Lithuanians are one of his favorite civs. Yeah, they are pretty good.
A
All
lot
right,
of possibilities with them.
finally, craziest strategy you've ever seen on this map, Juicy.
Back to the last time we did a 1v1 tournament with these maps. I think it was the last time. I was Andrew versus Jabari back in the day. It's been a couple years now. Jabari lamed everything he could and still ended up losing. it was it, it was an amazing map. It was right after the Goths had their like changes, you know. They always try to change the Goths to make them better, and it was right after like Loom was free. Like we just had to instantly research it, you know, right
Okay.
after that update. And yeah, he took full advantage of that, and then somehow ended up losing. It was extremely entertaining.
Did Jabari make a ball of 15 archers and then have like 4 villagers in his eco and go around with the archers? Did Jabari pick an archer civ?
No, he was the Goth player.
Oh, he was the Goths. Okay.
Yep. Which this is back long time ago before Jabari became a two archer, two archery range guy. So
All right. So I think we pretty much exhausted the lanes topic. We're going to move on to Mott and Bailey here. And this is a really interesting and unique map. Tell us a little bit about this map, Juicy.
well, this is Hitch's idea. And he went into some historical context about, you know, what a Mott and Bailey really is. But basically, you know, before there were castles and stuff, they would build their towns in manners such as this, as Hitch explains. I'm not too familiar with everything there, but basically, it's a really deceptive map because you have all these walls and you have great vision on the map. Essentially, you see like a quarter of the map starting things out. But strategic choices here really make or break, and it's hard to scout that, which makes it even more difficult. The trade workshops here doesn't do anything. People are always confused about that. So let me just say that it actually doesn't generate resources or anything like that that you see in all those community game
Mm-hmm.
functions, but it's aesthetically pleasing is
Yeah,
on it. It gives you a little bit of vision, so that's all you get, guys. Sorry.
it's fun. Well, you know, people have set up like trade workshops where you could make a specific like hero unit from optionally
Mhm.
for some of these S tier tournaments. People have submitted some pretty creative maps about that. But in this case, this is just a pretty building that they built in this Mott and
Yeah.
Bailey. What's this house doing outside the walls? Is that supposed to be there? Maybe there's a chance that houses can spawn outside the walls. I'd hate to be these
Uh,
people, though. I wouldn't feel very safe living out here.
yeah, I mean it's not something we see often. We've messed around with it a little bit. I think we only see it like 1 out of every 10 times, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it just has to do with the way that some of the resources generate and how he has it set up for the scripting for the houses. So, like you start with 3 houses, so
Mm-hmm.
instantly that changes build orders. And this is a map that I have considered changing to a 9ville start to make it even more of like a fast castle, get to the next stage, and get
Mm-hmm.
like speed the process up a little bit.
Now, I mean, this you said this kind of looks sort of deceptively safe. I mean, it's only a palisade wall, right? Do you see feudal aggression on this, or does everybody just go FC?
Oh, no, yeah, we see a lot of feudal aggression, and it's feudal aggression that's so good when someone uses their resources to go to Castle Age, they have nothing by the time they get up. It's insane. I mean, you're looking at the map, you see a lot of walls. You think, safer economy essentially, but ultimately, if you can get into your opponent's base, it's very easy to deny resources. You got to think
Mm-hmm.
there's extra hunt, extra berries, all the golden stone that you have access to is all right there. And
Yep.
if it's all under threat and you're in Castle Age, it's not like you can really make anything with food and wood that can't be competed with
Yeah.
from the feudal age.
Because if you lose access to this outer area out here, I mean, what do you have left in your
Yeah.
uppermost fortification? You've got some wood, and that's basically whatever farms you built. So it looks like the players start kind of in opposite corners here. Given how big the player bases are, it could be harder to move the players closer together. It's like there's reasonable neutral area out here that players could expand into. What are some civs that are popular for this map, Juicy?
For the most part, we've seen a lot of Kumans. They think the 2 TC boom will be a good idea. That's yet to work out, but we've seen that picked a lot. We've also seen like Ethiopians, Franks frequently. Poles have become a recent favorite, which makes sense. You get the stone and you get gold income as well. It's kind of nice. And then Franks, because of all the extra berries.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we've seen Mongols because we do have extra hunt here. But this is another one that we haven't seen for a while. We saw in the 2v2s, but as far as 1v1s, we haven't seen it much. We didn't really change anything on this map, so it's all pretty much the same as it was back then. But crazy strategies, there hasn't been a lot of them because usually what we've seen is one player goes feudal, the other tries to fast castle, and usually the player who fast castles is in a worse place because of it. Sometimes it does pay off, but usually it's the player being more aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that you said Kumans, like if you think maybe the two town center boom, but on the other hand, maybe somebody builds a forward siege workshop and busts in with rams and those cheap buildings. They get lots of Cuman archers and scouts and all that feudal age madness out. So I don't know. Maybe you don't need the rams to get through because they're only palisade walls.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
But
I mean, you can get through with man at arms, scouts, archers. It doesn't take much.
doesn't take much. You ever had anybody like go up and just stonewall behind this and then go fast castle or fastish castle behind that? Or does nobody really
No,
build stone walls behind this?
no, stone walls really aren't that effective here because it's so much walling.
Yeah,
And
that's
if you're
true.
fast castling, you're not going to have the stone to wall and drop TCs immediately. Plus, again, usually you're under some sort of threat.
All right, let's take a look at the next map here. Nomad Hubs. I like this map. I like Mont and Bailey, but Nomad Hubs looks pretty interesting too. Tell us about this map, Juicy.
So we wanted to round out our map with a nomad map, as one does. Want a map of every style, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Hitch came up with this concept to have these hubs here, where if you have the bog terrain that has the wood in it, those trees have additional wood, so that's supposed to be the wood hub. The straight desert terrain is supposed to be the food hub. It has boars, berries, extra hunt usually. And then the mineral deposits are more frequent and in higher number. There's more gold per tile and more stone per tile on like the mineral terrain, which is like the gray rocky terrain. 1,600 gold per tile on that.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of
Yep.
gold then. So It's a standard nomad. It's a basically standard land nomad map. You can technically dock, right? Do people dock on this map?
I mean, you can, but it's really not worth it unless you're just
Yeah.
gonna do fish traps.
Yeah, no
It's a lot of
resources.
investment.
No
Yep.
resources for it. Maybe strategic value if you're Malay and you're building harbors everywhere, but other than that, why would you, right? Now I'm seeing these brown snakes that are stretching in between these different hub areas.
Yep, that's one of our recent changes. That's just to give the player an idea of where the next hub is for town center placing purposes. Like, say you end up on a bog terrain and you want to try to find some other terrain, like those roads or whatever this terrain is called that Hitch placed in here, can kind of like be like, all right, there's one over here. Because if you look at some of them, there's only one pathway going in that direction. Some of them have two or three different shoots going off of them. It's really just aesthetics that players probably wouldn't pick up on, but it does
Hmm.
point you in the direction of another hub.
Oh, that's a neat idea. I did not think you were going to answer like that. I'm glad that I asked. I thought you were going to tell me that they used to be interconnected by a channel of water, and you changed it to dry grass terrain so that players couldn't sail around everywhere.
No, I
Um,
mean that would be extremely entertaining. But a lot of water already on the map pool. This is simply just to give players a better idea of where to go with their starting villagers to try to help them find the hub they want to put their town center on.
Cookie Pirate says build a dock on every swamp and burn everything around with fast fire ships. You probably don't see too many fast fire ships though, just because players could get away from them pretty easily. Although maybe you see demo ships on people's wood lines, that would be pretty devastating.
I mean, I don't think we've seen anyone dock these, to be honest.
Just
So,
because no resources.
well, and to think about how much it takes to get up to some of that and the amount of resources you'd have to spend for potentially little to no gain.
Yeah, they're pretty small, so chances are your opponent is going to see it happening. It's going to be within his vision, and then he's going to wall his wood line off. But if you can kill 10 villagers on a wood line with the demolition raft, it's definitely worth it, but you have to know that you can. Your opponent's
Yeah,
probably not going to let it happen.
exactly.
So, favorite civs for this map?
Honestly, this is such a interesting map that I don't think we've seen enough of the same civs to really have that worked out. I mean, I always favor a mobile civ on maps like this,
Mm-hmm.
but again, usually if you're a mobile civ, then you have somebody going into archers or something, and archers are so sneaky. You can get so much value out of getting behind a wood line with some crossbows. I haven't
So,
really seen a lot of games played on this. We've seen maybe 10 or 15 over the few years that we've used it. Usually people don't like the RNG that you have with Nomad, so they try to avoid Nomad starts.
that's true. No, and that's nothing against the map itself. It's just against nomad maps in general. Folks tend to feel like it's more RNG and not as rewarding of skill. Now, 4 villagers instead of 3 starting villagers, I'm counting, just to help
Yep.
speed it up a little bit.
Yeah, and if you've noticed, the villagers usually start relatively spread out. Maybe one or two are close to one another, but
Hmm.
generally they are not. And we did that on purpose to allow you to, again, find a spot you really want to put your town center. There's a lot of herdables on the map, which can help boost the economy in the early going. And it's different than the meta.
Anything else about nomad hubs before we turn to Shaded Pond? Tell
No.
us about a crazy game. No, it seems pretty straightforward. Shaded Pond, then.
Yeah, so Shaded Pond started as like a. Basically, I told Hitch I wanted Oasis, but the inverse of Oasis. I wanted the woods all to be on the outside and the water to be viable and be somewhat of something that needs to be contested. We did change. These used to be, the bamboo used to be a regular tree. These are now reeds. So they're actually much less. It's like 50 wood, so like half of what a tree would be, making water all that more viable. We had a lot of feedback that it was just too much investment to get in there to put down the docks, and it was just too late. Basically, you could FC without it. But with this new change, I'm really curious to see if players go for water more frequently. One thing we've seen that's been really entertaining is someone will chop through on both sides, and then the military can run straight through the middle. So you really have to
Oh.
wall that up.
So you mean like somebody will build a lumber camp here and chop through, and then how do they chop
Well,
through over here?
there's sand terrain on both sides, so if both players chop through, like, and it's not walled,
Oh, all
and you
right.
don't dock in the proper spots that are on both sides of that, you can literally run. Someone ran like 60 paladin through the
Oh,
middle.
that's pretty funny. So, so basically, it looks like what you do is you kind of wall off your own little section of this donut here. You chop through to the middle to get maybe build your first lumber camp on the reeds, or do people build their first lumber camp on the real wood? Because the first lumber camp on the reeds would be quite terrible. Where's your first lumber camp should be built on this map?
Personally, mine's going on the reeds because I want water. I want to have the food. I want to be able to produce more economic units, to set the economy up better. But again, been proven wrong many times, and a lot of people completely ignore the middle.
And just
They
say
wall up, they fast castle, and go from there. This is a very boomy map, surprisingly.
not so much feudal aggression on the map.
No, not at all. I mean, we've seen it a couple times, but it really hasn't been super successful.
Do you want it to be feudally aggressive, or do you want to? You're kind of going for the more closed map feel on this one.
This one, I really just wanted a different map that, again, could be played strategically differently. So, if I'm playing and I go for the water and my opponent doesn't go for the water, I'm guessing I'm going to be farther behind as far as the age up times, but I'm counting on the fact that all the fish here to really pay off later on.
Hmm.
So,
Good economic
the
benefit.
nice thing with the water here, if you do win it, cannon galleons can be extremely entertaining to watch in the middle because it can range. It can range so much.
Yeah, especially Turk cannon galleons. Although Spanish cannon galleons would kill everything.
Yeah, it's really an interesting part to have in addition. Like, I don't know how many Oasis games you've watched, but every time that there ends up being something on the water in the middle, it's always even more entertaining to me. So it's kind of the idea behind the centerpiece of this map.
What are some popular cibs for this map?
I mean, Turks have been on my mind for this one just for the cannon galleons, but usually that doesn't happen. But we have seen a lot of Sicilians and Spanish in this map, very castle droppy. So
What
I would
about
say those are probably the favorites.
what about Celts? Chop through
We haven't really
faster.
seen much Celts here, really, but that's a good idea.
Ah, no Celts love. Ah,
Not much on this. Usually, if we see Celts, it's on lanes, actually.
to chop through there. Maybe it's because people are spending their Celts picks on lanes because it's harder to chop through on lanes than it is to chop through on Shaded Pond. So, any crazy stories about Shaded Pond before we move on to the next map?
No, no.
All right, tell me about Shallow's Sandwich. What the heck is this, Juicy? Does anybody play
Well,
this map?
yes, they do. This is actually one of my favorite maps we have for the 1v1s. So you've seen the hamburger.
Yep.
That's what this is based off of, essentially. But instead of a giant wood line separating you and your opponent, we said, why not open that up and make it super aggressive? And this map has definitely provided that. Towers, douches, laming. I mean, you name any sort of early aggression strategy, we've seen it on this map, and it's been a joy to watch.
Do people use this out here, Juicy?
They do.
Do they actually get out here and like build stuff out here, or is this just they do?
No,
So
they do.
they come on out here and they build eco. I don't
Yep.
think you start with a transport ship.
You do
So
not.
you would have to dock to get out there, and you want to dock
Yep.
anyway because you want to get these fish on the outside. Um, so just hyper aggressive map. When do the games end on this one? Do they end in Castle Age, or does this go all the way up to Imp?
Surprisingly, a lot of these end very quickly, but you do get some like amazing gems that happen that go into like super late Imperial Age, and there's been a lot of failed douche attempts, a lot of successful douche attempts, and the hard part on this is balancing out your economy while trying to maintain your economy, or sorry, maintain like your map position. So as you can see by looking at it, usually your res is spread pretty far from your town center, given on the small islands that you start.
Mm-hmm.
So usually you have like one close gold, maybe a close gold or a close stone, maybe two if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's extremely vulnerable. So it makes for hyper aggression. I really love to see this map played. It's in my opinion, it is an insanely fun map to play, but it's even better to cast it.
I think this map would be very stressful for me to play, but I could definitely see how some people that like the action fast pace would like this map. Probably what I would do is I would just micro wall and then transport everything to the outside and then wall to the edge of the map on two sides and make my as much of my economy out here as possible. Try to win water. But then again I also hate water, so I might not do very well doing
It's
that.
hard because you have to find that gold on the outside if you're, focusing on water. You have to find a good spot to maintain your economy,
Yeah.
and the gold and the stone is all fairly limited out there, spread extremely far apart as well.
Most of it is in this shallows sandwich. And indeed it is a some shallows between two lobes of island. So, what are some favored civs for this map? What do you see people picking on this map to try to do damage?
Persians.
Persians?
Persians are the top pick because dock HP, it prevents you from being douched, but also allows you the opportunity to douche. Koreans because of tower rushes. Bulgarians with the man at arms, as instant man at arms, can be so helpful. Really prevent your opponent from moving towards you. But we've also seen civs like Italians, Portuguese, a lot of closed map civs and water map civs. So, you know, Italians and Persian or Portuguese and Persians both great on all those options. So we see those quite frequently.
All right. Any crazy stories about this map before we move on to the next one, Juicy?
Just if you had to play it, you just good luck.
It just seems like it's highly chaotic. It's kind of like Socotra, perhaps. Um,
Sort of, yeah. It just the water adds a different element. So like you obviously like with these small wood lines, you have to keep safe the wood line, and the wood lines you can chop through extremely quickly. It makes it even more open and more difficult to stay safe. So it's a mess. I love it.
all right. The next map is Water Arena.
Oh boy.
Tell me about Water Arena. I was like, I like half of that title. And then I did some generates. What are you guys going for on this map?
Pure chaos.
Pure, pure chaos.
Yeah,
Think
so you have sea towers, which actually really benefits you docking near those. You have a tower, which may look suspect to some, in the middle of your economy.
yeah. What's this doing here, Juicy? Like, I
This is
looked at it. I could not make sense of that.
this is a fire tower, and I'll tell you why we have a fire tower, and why we have stone walls now. Because the original generation had palisade walls. I played a show match against someone, and I chose to go demo everything. And it worked extremely successfully.
Wow.
To which we had to change the map because I didn't think it would work so well. But essentially, There's a lot of changes made, but this is another map that's kind of new as far as all these new changes, all the things going on here. There's some deep fish. You can actually, fish like shore fish with your villagers inside of here. It's why there's no boars. There's less hunt. It's an extremely water-heavy map, obviously. The trees on the outside islands and the golds and stones, I believe, all have additional res. Maybe not the stone. That's the only one I'm questioning. The trees and the gold definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a risk to be out here on these islands. But I'm really torn as to if this will be in a tournament or not. We really have it in the show matches and as an option to see if people want to play it and what it looks like. And right now the show matches are all maps are available. There's no Civ bans. There's a draft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to limit players when we're doing show matches and we're trying to see if the maps are breakable, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah. I
I
love
leave
this.
people
I
with
love this,
options.
Juicy. This is my favorite map that we've looked at so far. I just, I look at it, I see, you start with stone walls, you start with towers. Looks great. Now, what about these sea towers? What are these doing out here? Are these sea towers just preventing people from tower rushing your wood lines? What's up with
Uh,
this?
they do more damage to ships, I
Ah,
believe, as what the draw behind it was and the idea behind it. That's why it's extremely successful to dock near those. Now, I have not tested that theory, but from what I've seen, that is what occurs, right? So they are kind of like what is it? The Red Bull map. I forget what it's called, Moraz or whatever, where they have
I
the
don't
sea
know.
tower there.
I know we
Uh,
reviewed it with Zetnus, but I don't know. I don't remember the name of the map.
yeah, I forget too. But essentially, that's like the purpose behind those. It will make it easier to defend one's shore, but also harder to attack your opponent. So I'm really curious how this will go. I think we're going to see a lot of water play for map control, where you secure, like, if you look in between, like, the middle islands, like the pathways between there towards your opponent. I think holding that with military will become extremely important. A lot of chokes, as far as that's concerned, because there
Mm-hmm.
are a significant number of islands on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've seen a couple different strategies here from the few games that we've played on it, but the real issue becomes, what does your late game composition look like? How was your boom behind it? Because you obviously have to spend a lot to get everything going for water. Wood becomes an issue in late game. Very interesting map. Portuguese, probably the favorite here, I would say.
Portuguese. What about Byzantines? They would be my go-to for this map. That's probably not
Well,
saying much, though.
yeah, I say Portuguese because the way that the new bonus for them works, the berries gathering wood as well, can be extremely good to help start out the water builds.
Hmm.
You've seen on Arena, Portuguese have a huge population boost as far as players picking them because they have that 22 pop FC, which on this map could be fairly successful. Harder to pressure your economy, easier to get up at a good time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out how I could monk rush somebody on this map, but I just don't know, Juicy. It might just be a galley and a galleon and fire ships and demo ship map at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We don't have like a whole lot to go on with this one, right? So, a lot of interesting ideas went into this one, and I really like some of them. Not a huge fan of all of them, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be chaos.
Yeah, Cookie Pirate says I love this. I love it, and I agree. This looks like a lot of fun to try. It looks scary. I'm not gonna lie. It looks scary. I feel a little bit better with the stone walls. It still looks a bit scary, but you've made some great improvements. I'm looking forward to testing it out.
Yeah, the Russian Discord actually they hosted a like tournament amongst themselves that this was the only map they played. So,
Yeah,
so
that's
it
funny.
was interesting. Yeah.
They do that. They do that kind of thing with some of the crazy maps. You're gonna have to invite me back to that Discord. I think I left a long time ago because I kept on getting pinged and I couldn't figure out how to disable my notifications. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm not in it anymore either. Unfortunately, I only joined it because of that.
Yeah, because
So,
of the Karga tournament, or is this a different one?
oh, it was a
Okay.
different one.
Oh, okay. All right. So, anything else that we need to bring up about this map before we move on to Watershed?
Oh, I just then I hope someone picks it.
I am 100% picking this map. I don't care if Akal's watching right now, and I don't care if Akal chooses his sieves or uses that information against me. I am 100% picking this map because I
All
want to
right,
try it,
sounds great.
and I definitely am not making monks on it. If you're watching, Akal. All right. So tell me about Watershed here. Watershed is our last map. Guys, we're doing the Battlegrounds 2022 map pack, and we're looking at them and asking Juicy about them. Juicy and his community have been working on these maps and providing feedback, and there's a lot that goes into the scripting too that Hitch takes care of. But tell me about this final map here, Watershed.
So, Watershed, it is a map that I'm still conflicted upon. We did this because in 2v2s, this is a fun map because if you see your current generation, players would start there and they would start in the north. And if you load up another gen or two, you might see that players can still also start in the north, not the south.
Mm-hmm.
So it provides different possibilities for how the game will go. Obviously, if you start and your TCs are on, the south and the west, then you're looking at more of a water fight, right? But if you start in the north and in the east, it's relatively close distance to your opponent, and we see more in the lines of scouts and archers.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's going to be interesting to see if players can adapt to this, because you're going to need a civ that can do both. And depending on where you end up starting, you're going to have to instantly be like, okay, this is my build.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have to do fight for water, obviously you're going to have to do a water build. If you're going to completely ignore water, that's also possible. But then we added these lovely little watersheds that come up right near your town center. So it could be annoying depending on how everything generates in. Sometimes, if you look at different generations, somebody might have a gold close to there,
Or
or
berries.
a stone, or berries, but it's not a guarantee. So if you have a gen pop up and you don't have any res that's potentially going to get hit from those, you could completely ignore water and just full focus land. And again, that's where I like to see these kind of maps because scouting is going to be super important.
Yep. Yeah, and this is a great thing in my opinion that it's not a guarantee where your players start. The players will find it annoying. They'll be like, "Can you guarantee that we always start here so that when I pick this civ, I know what I'm gonna get?" But I say, nah, pick a versatile civ. Pick a civ and master the different possibilities. That's what I say.
Yep.
So I like this a lot. Um, what do you what? So this has been around for a little bit. Cookie Pirate says Watershed looks very familiar. What kind of strategies do you see on Watershed then? It sounds like when they start up here, they go scouts or archers. And if they start down here,
Mm-hmm.
they go water. And where does it go from there? Does it end in feudal age, or do they find a way of walling it off and securing their resources, and then they go into castle age?
Surprisingly, this has turned into a very interesting post-imp game. Almost, I would say 70% of the time. Like, that's just a random number in my head, but from all the games I've seen on this, it almost always goes late. Water is really not super significant here as far as like resources, because usually, if you're both on the south and the west corner, you're fighting for water, you're taking the fish, resources are being spent. It's not like a super big win by the time you win water usually, because there's not a ton of deep fish or shore fish there. It's more
Mm-hmm.
of a map control position. Um, so it's really interesting. Again, kind of like how we have Arena Cove, but there's no arena sense to it. It's more open. Allows for some interesting strategies. Everyone that I have talked to about this map is just waiting for someone to transport over and just castle drop the TC or douche the TC. but yet to see that happen. So.
Oh, that does sound. You mean this like sail all the way up this watershed and just be like Sicilians and just be like, here we go, dropping a
Yep.
castle on your town center. Do
Yeah.
do
Exactly.
people wall off this channel to prevent that from happening?
No, usually it's too annoying for
Hmm.
people to spend their resources that way. I guess. I mean,
If
I've
it,
yet to see it. It would be
true.
interesting, but
People,
have
yeah,
it.
people won't do it until they get castle dropped in that manner, right? And then it might be more of a risk. But yeah, to wall all this off could be kind of annoying, sort of a waste of time and resources if
Yeah,
you get.
and it's usually like if you're fighting for water and you lose water, you're like instantly changing everything at home, right? Because you're like, all right, I can't fight water now. I have to shift into land, whatever
Hmm.
that choice may be. If it's scouts, knights, whatever. So
Favorite civs on this, Juicy? You said versatile civs.
yeah, I mean, basically, I think if you can go again, pick a civ that can do good on water and on land, you're in good shape here. Persians, I think, could be favorable on this one. Italians, civ that has some mobility options, but has the good eco behind it as well, would be beneficial.
All right, and anything else you want to tell us about this map before we move on?
No, I mean, again, it's fairly new for the 1v1 scene. Just to, again, you got to be able to realize where you are on the map instantly and make your build order from there. So, going to be interesting to see what happens.
All right, and with that, that's the final map in Battlegrounds 2023. So we really appreciate Juicy45 joining us on ScriptChat today to talk about these maps and the map designs. Remember, we don't always just have to dig into the technical details on ScriptChat. We can, but a lot of it is also just talking about some of the stuff that people come up with and what they use it for if they're applying it to any show matches or tournaments and some of the different design considerations that can go into random map scripting. Because you could learn how to make a fantastic looking map, right? But it may not play out very well. You got to be careful about where you put the resources and how much resources you give and how far away apart you put the players and the different types of terrains that go down. It all can have a huge impact. And if you're not careful, as you go higher and higher in ELO, folks are going to figure out ways of exploiting things a lot easier. So that's why it's really great that Juicy has a community where everybody works together and tests it and make sure that these maps are waterproof and that the concepts behind them are well executed. And I think that's what we saw today.
Yeah, I think there's a really big part of our game that people just don't appreciate, and I think that falls back to map scripting. Like, there's so much that can be done, and sometimes it shouldn't be done, but there's so much that can be done that can really like make for amazing games, amazing maps at all levels, not just the pro scene. So I think just not enough appreciation for map scripters.
All right, Juicy, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and describing all of this and some great work done by Hitch and the rest of your community. And I'm really looking forward to the show match.
Yeah, I look forward to casting them. So hope you guys are ready. Hope you guys have fun, and thanks for having me.
Cookie Pirate says, Juicy, keep up the good work. Those maps look a ton of fun, especially Water Arena. There you go. Juicy getting some love. Thank you so much for joining us, Juicy.
Yep, thank you guys. Have a good one.
All right, so I think that's going to do it for us today, guys. We've had Juicy45 on the show going over the Battlegrounds 2023 map pack. If you guys are interested, let us know. And well, actually, I'll see what this is actually a published mod. It's in the very advanced stages. So after I end the video here, I will update the description to give a link to this mod. So that if you're interested in any of these maps, you can download them. And of course, if you're interested in participating in any show matches or in a tournament that might be in the works in the near future, hosted by Juicy, then let me know and we'll get you in contact with him. So thank you so much, guys, for joining. I think we've taken up enough of your time this afternoon, so we're not going to do a text lesson. We're not going to answer any questions. I guess if somebody had questions, we'd answer them. So you better hurry up and ask fast while I give my outro speech here. But it's very important to shine a light on the really awesome things that people are doing with random map scripting, because there are a lot of talented people that make maps. They're not just the people who are scripting for S tier tournaments. Because there's a lot that goes into having your maps chosen for that. It goes far beyond making the best map possible. It's also a matter of having perhaps good connections as well, or just maybe a little bit of luck too. Um, so we really appreciate Juicy taking the time to join us here, and we'll leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you guys will have the opportunity to see a show match on Juicy's channel sometime soon with yours truly. So we'll catch you guys later, and really appreciate you being here. Thank you.